Hey, welcome to this lovely, fun watercolor project that's only using 3 colors, red, yellow, and blue, which is basically the basic triad. I'm using ultramarine blue, quinacridone coral, and cadmium yellow medium hue. If you don't have these particular colors, it's fine. All you need is red, yellow, and blue. I have an 1.5 inch brush. If you don't have this, they make those foam brushes. I'm just using this to put water on, or you could use a sponge. I also have a 1/2 inch flat brush, and when you're getting one of these, I don't know if you can see it, they have really nice tips. And so they're supposed to make like a nice tip, okay? Paper, this is cotton paper. It's Arches 140-pound cold press, 100% cotton. If watercolor works best on watercolor paper, that's cotton. The cotton paper takes the paint differently. So you can buy a lot of different kinds in the store. If it doesn't say cotton, it isn't. A paper towel underneath my surface to catch the extra water. I'm going to use some saran wrap and a palette. This is like the lid to my normal palette, and I just put out the red, yellow, and blue. So that's the beginning. So I'm going to get my brush wet, and I'm just going to cover this with water. And you know, it curls. I don't much, doesn't matter to me. I don't want to thin these paints out too much, because if I do that, there won't be anything left. Watercolor dries about 20% lighter. And so however dark it looks when you put it on, it's probably not going to be that dark when it dries. I enjoy Daniel Smith paints because they have such a high pigment concentration. My feeling is they don't fade as much. I can't like document that though. I just feel like the colors are stronger and they stay better after the paint dries. So basically, I'm not mixing the colors before I put them on. I am just putting them on, okay? I want good color variety, and it is kind of fun to you know, swish some water around, you know? This is just tapping water. You can also tilt if you're working on a smaller board. That works good. I'm working on something larger, so the tilt isn't really going to happen. But if I have enough water on here, then I can just kind of move the paint around. These little white things on the edges, they look really great till I go to put a mat on. And then all of a sudden it's the only thing I see in the picture. So kind of be aware of that. I don't mind them so much if they're in the middle. So I have pretty good color on there. So that's my color so far. And then I am just going to take this saran wrap and just kind of tap it on here. What I'm looking for is this texture where it kind of wrinkles. So if you kind of look at, see, I need to leave this on about 10 or 15 minutes. It's dry enough when I lift the saran wrap and this texture stays. So that's kind of what I'm looking for as a dry thing. And then it usually takes a little bit longer after that to dry. So that is step 1 of the leaf painting. Oh, and the other thing you need is a leaf, okay? So do this much and have fun. I have just lifted the saran wrap. It's still wet, but you can see the lovely patterns that happened with the design. There's two different ways you can go. You can hair dry it at this point if you don't want to wait for it to dry naturally, because I want to put a wash over it. Or you can let it dry naturally. Again, this isn't scientific proof or fact or anything, but my feeling when I use the hairdryer on my paintings is that the heat kind of sets the color, and if I decide I want to lift it later, sometimes it can be more difficult to lift. So I don't generally hair dry unless I'm in a hurry. And the other thing, I think the hairdryer makes a lot of noise. So those are your two choices about how to move on to this. It's still a little bit wet. I don't mind if it's damp to the touch, but you can see there's some of these just little water globules on here. And so that is just a bit too wet for what I want to do next. I'll be right back. So I opted to hair dry, and so these little globby places are now pretty dry. The paper still feels damp, and I'm okay if it's a little damp. That's not really a problem. I just kind of need the paint to be set. And then the next thing I want to kind of figure out is where to put this leaf. So you can kind of figure out like what you have. Like I have this big bright piece of yellow here. So if I put the leaf in this way, I'll get some of that yellow as well as some of this yellow up in here. And then it'll touch the edge on just about pretty much 3 sides, which is kind of nice. Everywhere it touches the edge, it kind of helps it to be grounded a little bit. So I'm gonna take my 1/2-inch brush and some of the water, and I have a little paint rag here that I'm kind of dabbing the brush in a little bit. And this is, see how thin that is? It's very thin because I want to use it as kind of a glaze. Because, you know, I'm totally not completely sure how this is going to work. So if I do it as a glaze, then if I want to take it off, it's maybe kind of removable. And I'm just kind of painting over this leaf shape. And these guys have been in the house for a while, so they're kind of dry. I just didn't have the heart to throw them out and go start over, but I suppose I could do that, right? And maybe over here where I'm going over yellow, I'm going to change and go behind that leaf with maybe some red. And gosh, colors under there, kind of reddish. It's really fun, like if you have a driveway or a parking lot or a patio in the backyard, to check out and see how all your leaves look as they fall. And they just kind of sit on the pavement. I love seeing that. One of my favorite activities is like going down to Northwest Portland. They have a lot of ginkgo leaves and everything there. And just checking out the patterns that the leaves make in the gutters. So if I've made it dark enough, I actually know where my leaf is. So that's kind of important. So it needs to be a bit darker up here. And then I'm gonna just kind of take what's in the brush, which is just kind of a bunch of water, and I'm just gonna kind of fill in a lot of this weight. And I'm still trying to figure out where everything is. So, you know, if you have issues with that, it's completely normal. This is funny. I can't. Okay, let me go in with this a little bit darker. There we go. And this maybe should be darker. So I kind of want to be able to see the leaf, right? If I can't see the leaf, I have a problem. You can also use Kleenex or tissue. And, you know, if I dab on areas where maybe it's too, I don't want paint, that's a way to lift. So your tissue or your Kleenex can be your eraser, right? Okay, I am starting to see it now. Sort of. And it was just really straight right there. I don't know if I really like that, but, you know, sometimes it's... Sometimes it is what it is, right? And okay, I kind of see the leaf now, so this is a good thing. All right. That's looking very nice. So, ideally, what I'd like to do is have some of my leaf be dark against the light background and light against the dark background. So I kind of have the light against dark, but I don't really have the dark against light. And so I think what I'm going to do is kind of flip some of this a bit. And I'm going to try taking some of this blue, and I'm going to see what happens if I make this part darker. It may not work. And then I also know I want like some veins, right? So I'm using the water to just kind of go over some of these lines. So the lines become like a little bit more natural. And then here, where the leaf got really dark, if I take my brush and I put it in the water and then I just squeeze all the water out and I drag it up the edge there, then I get a line that's lighter, which is kind of fun. So I can do another one of those too. And then maybe just keep going with some of these darker lines. So it's going to keep disappearing for a bit because the paint is wet. So that's actually okay. Not a problem. So again, trying to remember where it is. So this is supposed to be lighter in here. So I'm just going to kind of lift a little bit. There we go. I think that is going to work. Yay. So you might kind of go, oh, but you know, I really wanted some brown. Well, red and yellow make orange. And generally, orange and blue, and it needs more red, start making brown. So it's not a real deep brown. It's because I use such a really I used a really lightweight red, but that's okay. So what I think I'm going to do, see that nice tan that makes? I'm going to add some of it. So this is a mixed color going over it. And see, this is kind of a neutrally kind of color. It's a color that isn't like super intense. It's not as saturated as the pure color. So when I do that, it makes this pure color kind of stand out, right? Which is kind of what I want. And then I'm going to take some of this blue and maybe add a little red to it. So blue and red generally make a purple. This red has a little bit of yellow in it, so it doesn't make like the world's greatest purple, but it works. If you're using a red like that's a cadmium red, that has a bunch of yellow in it, so it's probably not going to get you very good purples. This red, even though it does have yellow in it, it's also on the pink side, whereas cadmium red is more of an orange. So it won't do purple. It's a good thought though. And then I think what I want to do is take some of this yellow and just tip it on the edge here. So this paint is straight out of the tube, and so it's pretty thick straight out of the tube. But I don't have to, I mean, I can let it dry on my palette, like, and then like come back tomorrow, and then all I have to do is like get it wet. So what I'm kind of trying to do is I'm just trying to dial back this yellow just a little bit. But I want some brightness. Where, you know, if the color starts running into the paper, you know, that's okay. Don't, it's watercolor, right? It's supposed to be watery. So if it does that, don't worry about it. So what I'm kind of trying to do is I'm, again, using kind of a thin coat of this yellow, and I'm just kind of going over the whole leaf to kind of give it like a yellow glaze, and that should hopefully like unify it a little bit, because otherwise it's got so many different textures in it, it's hard to know what's going on with it. And then this is so bright in here, I'm just going to do a very, very light blue in here. So the best way to do this is possibly to wait till that dries, and I'm totally not a very patient painter, so I don't always manage to do the whole waiting thing. So your patience is generally rewarded by paint that doesn't run too much. So I think at this point it does kind of need to dry, but you can see how the leaf is just starting to really stand out. Okay, one more thing you might kind of enjoy. So this is actually sea salt, but you can use table salt or rock salt. The paper is shiny, like up in here when it's wet, but down in here that shine has started to kind of go away. So where the shine is starting to go away, I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit of salt on there. So you might want to try that and see what it does. So I'm back. So it's drier. So these little dots are caused by the salt. And they would be white, but I had color underneath. So you can salt over color, and then what'll happen is it'll push the top color away and you'll see the color underneath. Or if there had been no color underneath, it would have all been white. I thought it would be fun to try to give this a little bit more depth. So I kind of wanted to take that same brown I had and make it darker. So it's kind of, so if your brown turns purple, all you have to do is put some yellow in it. So even with these three colors, the ultramarine's pretty dark. And so I can get a darker color. So what I kind of wanted to do was to add kind of a branch shape in here. And, you know, it maybe isn't the right thing to do, but I thought it would give it like a little more depth, right? So if it goes here, and maybe it kind of comes out, maybe it kind of goes through here a little bit. And then maybe it kind of comes out there. And then I can also kind of like run some other branches through here. Like maybe there's something. It's hard to know where to put these things. This is why you want a nice point on your brush, because see, I can just kind of run some lines through there. You know, usually these trees, they're just filled with branches, because it's this whole tree world, right? And all the leaves like sit on the branches, and they're just like pretty neat. And some of the branches go up and some of them go across, and so everybody's kind of arranged differently. So some of these branches could be like maybe more of a blue, maybe. And they could also kind of go around through here. Some of them can be lighter, some of them can be darker. Think thinner and thicker, and you know, if you get impatient, just put a whole bunch in there. And then also, like using the water, I can just kind of take away some of the clarity. So I get a suggestion, but it's not completely defined, right? And then the other thing that's kind of bothering me is I feel like maybe I want like some kind of color in here. I think if I add like a little bit of purple, which I'm mixing, so this kind of makes a fairly decent red violet. Maybe, you know, just something a little bit darker. And yes, I'm covering up some of the texture I made, and that's okay because it's layers. So watercolor is like transparent. So you can see the layers underneath, and you can actually get by with quite a few layers, and it will still work. So it actually took me a long time to figure out layering in watercolor, because you can also make a really murky painting, which isn't always what I'm after. Okay, so this is kind of where it's ended up. So one way to like paint an autumn leaf, and I think it's kind of fun. And I hope that you enjoy it. And I'm going to add just a little bit more yellow here. So these last little things where you don't feel like you can stop doing stuff, watch out if you start doing that, because sometimes a picture that looks really good, by the time you're through adding a whole bunch of extra stuff, doesn't work anymore. So kind of be aware and get yourself to kind of put the brush down. All right, so after that last little bit, this is where it went. So I hope that you have a fun time painting an autumn leaf. Enjoy. One last thing, and I do these in my videos a lot. I just wanted to soften some of the edges up here. Okay, they were like the really hardest edge in the whole painting. So I think that looks more natural. So have a good one.